has now said the US has denied visas to 15 World Cup delegation members. Well, with just days to go until that competition, immigrant rights advocates in the 11 US host cities are mobilising to protect fans and residents from immigration enforcement activities this summer. Well, let's speak to someone who leads coordination efforts among different host cities. Jennifer Lee is director at the Centre for Community Health Innovation at Georgetown University Law Centre and lead at the Dignity 2026 Coalition, which brings together human rights groups, labour unions, athletes' organisations, fans and migrants' rights groups. Thanks for being with us. So tell us a bit about what you've been preparing and why there's so much concern ahead of these games.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're a few weeks out, or a few months out, actually, from what has been grabbing international headlines recently, what we've seen in Minneapolis and LA and other cities across the United States. You know, we all remember the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, and we remember the signs of protests and things like that. As we are about a week away from the World Cup, I think, you know, myself included, a lot of us soccer fans are, you know, putting out our brackets for who's going to win the teams or the World Cup over the course of the next few months. I think what's really uncertain right now, the analog that to cities, is the speculation around what ICE actually looks like in the World Cup host cities and around the country. Just yesterday, for example, the Senate here in the United States passed a $70 billion package to continue to fund ICE through the end of this administration. Despite the lack of public outrage that we see that has been kind of toppling headlines over the course of the past few months, there has been a surge in immigration cases. Just today, the New York Times reported that federal judges are experiencing a 2- or 3-fold increase in handling immigration cases or matters. And so for us in this country right now, there's a huge concern about the fact that it's not just ICE or immigration enforcement that's happening in stadiums, in cities, and around the country. It is the partnership between local law enforcement and immigration, federal immigration enforcement in this country that is casting such a wide shadow over this country for something that should be incredibly fun and exciting for us.
So what are your organisations, a lot of organisations that you represent there, what are you all trying to do to prevent any kind of problems?
Yeah, there's a lot of behind the scenes coordination. You know, obviously in this country, we have a very rich culture of grassroots organizations mobilizing organizations that are prepared to defend civil liberties and civil rights on the ground. And what that looks like in Kansas City and Dallas and Houston and New Jersey and New York is a lot of rapid response groups or even scouts groups having neighborhood and block watches, making sure that there's an army of volunteer immigration attorneys who are experienced in habeas defense and deportation defense, ready to pick up the phone, whether the call comes from airports, from the stadiums, or from even our communities, because who's at most risk right now for us, what we're most concerned about is workers, is community members, and not just the travelers.
And well, you mentioned the travelers there. Do you think that they'll be safe from the activities of ICE?
I think, you know, it depends on the traveler. I hate to say it's such a depends question. I think the reality of what you see in this country right now is that immigration enforcement is often done by racial profiling. So as I mentioned, you know, a lot of our colleagues and immigration experts have said that any interaction with law enforcement in this country could be a potential pipeline for deportation. So certainly, you know, we're launching next week a resource called airportlawyer.org. That's airportlawyer.org, where if something happens, if you're pulled aside for a secondary screening, we can connect you to a lawyer. We're making sure that worker resource centers, that immigration groups, rapid responders across the country are mobilized and ready to pick up their phones.
Jennifer Lee, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.